Oh, hey everyone, how you doing? Woo! Nice. Early in the morning, but it's Sunday, so it's a good day to talk some music. So today I'm gonna talk about how I made my last remix for Andrew Rael. It's called Home. It was released in December, and it's like obviously a progressive house remix. And I just want to talk to you guys how you can approach to make a remix or a bootleg of some sort. And I will start off first with showing the original song, so you can like hear how it sounds as an original, and then I will show you the project of the remix, which I have right here. But let's start off with the remix first.
I thought we'd been through it all, had our rise and fall, but I'm breathing uneasy, feeling like an empty shell, but no one can tell that I'm falling to pieces. Been running through the dark, chasing my own shadow, but I gave it all I got, sleeping on my own, 'cause it feels like home. I'll make it on my own.
So as you can hear, the original is like a future-based pop song. But usually when I get a remix proposal from an artist or a label, like in this case from Armada, I usually tend to first listen to the vocal. If I really feel the vocal, I will approach it and I will try to make a remix out of it. But if I don't really feel the vocal and don't get any feelings from it, I usually tend to not doing the remix, because for me it's really important that you feel something from the original when doing a remix. So in this case, when you have like this, you get all the stems from the label, from the artist. You usually you get like a wet vocal that's already mixed, and in this case, this is a vocal from Jonathan Mendelssohn, which is an amazing vocalist. I love him a lot. I've been working. I've been knowing him for like a while, and he's a really great singer. And every top line he does is just incredible. So I was really happy that received this vocal from him on this song, because it's so beautiful. So in this case, usually when I listen to the vocal, I try to feel if it's gonna work with my progressive house idea. And in this case, I just worked with a already wet vocal because it sounded so perfect already. But sometimes you need to do your own mix. Like you don't mixing on the vocals. Then you usually work on the dry vocal that you also receive in the stem pack. In this case, we can just break down the song from the beginning. So basically, when I start off with a song, I rarely start off with the intro or outro. I usually start off with a break. So first, I try to find the emotions in the song. And during this time, I was on a tour in China, and I was like a little bit homesick. And this song is called Home, and the lyrics is about like feeling most comfortable and like that home is always best. And that's why I felt like really inspired by this vocal and this whole idea that they send me. So what I usually start off with first is to play around with some chords and some top melodies on top of the chords that I receive from the stem pack. Let's see here.
I thought we'd been through it all, had our rise and fall, but I'm breathing uneasy.
So what I first did here in the break actually was usually sometimes when I make a remix, I tend to do everything by myself. But when you have a short deadline, sometimes you have to use some parts of the stem pack. So what I did here was that I used the stems from the piano, the main piano that Jonathan Manse recorded on a real piano in the break, basically because it sounds so acoustic, so original, and so basically so beautiful. And what I did was that I just broke down the chords, so I had all the chords and everything ready. And what I like to do in the break, for example, is to always use a vocoder because it really fills out the some missing frequencies, and it will really add some warmth to your vocal and also to your whole mix in a breakdown. Even though you might not hear it necessarily, a vocoder really adds warm frequencies to your break. And it doesn't need to be anything fancy. This is the built-in vocoder from Logic that I use in this case, which is pretty basic, but with some cutting off the high frequencies so it doesn't interfere too much with the vocal. It really gives warmth
I
to.
thought we'd been through it all.
So this is a great tip that I think that many of you guys can use for your breakdowns to work more with vocoders with vocals, because it doesn't need to be in the main focus, but it can just be in the background as a filling element. And usually now I have the piano here from the stem pack. Obviously some EQing to make sure it doesn't interfere with the vocoder and with the vocal. I like to use OTT on some parts of the song. Sometimes it can mess up your mix, especially in the drop. It's very tender. So I mainly use this OTT on sounds that I know requires a lot of the dynamics, which is like in the breakdown where there's a lot of headroom and open space, so you can like really maximize like one sound. And I really wanted this sound to pop out more and become more powerful. And the OTT really does a job in this case for this piano. And then obviously some EQing just to cut out some highs because it was interfering too much with the vocoder that I had.
I thought we'd been through.
And also what I like to always build up in the breakdowns is a arpeggiator. For some of you guys who see maybe my masterclass before, they know that I always use ARP in my songs, even though it maybe not always is that obvious in some songs. But I like to add like an ARP because it really adds some incredible emotions to your song. It really helps to create an atmospheric vibe, but also to give an extra boost of emotional feelings, which is that's one of my tips. I always use it when I start off a song. I always start off with like either a top melody with an ARP of some kind, and then I start off with the chords and I do the top melody, and then from there on I just build up the whole song. And it doesn't need to be anything fancy. It can just be this is a very basic Nexus preset, and it's all about like how you play the melody and how you build it up throughout the whole song. In this case, this is mainly for the background atmospheric vibe. So it's not really there for making like a hook or something. It's just there to be like an atmospheric sound to create emotions, to add even more emotions to what already is in the song. And also, always try to cut out your lows, but this is basic stuff that you always cut out the lows of sounds, especially lead sounds. And then I also love the Fab Filter Pro EQ because it's very easy to handle. It's very clear. You can see everything. And usually what I do with my sounds is that, with most of my sounds, not all of them, but I like to find like 3 or 4 weak points in my mix, basically, or in that sound. So when I approach a sound, I first try to find like one bad frequency. And the technique I use for finding bad frequencies is to, I will show you. So when I have a sound here, for example, like this ARP, what I usually do is that I just boost it too much, basically. And what's really good with Fab Filter Pro Q is that you can actually solo this frequency. And this way, you can really find some really harsh frequencies in your mix, and then you just do a dip there, which is pretty, a very effective tool by using FabFilter Pro Q because it really helps you to solo that frequency rather than like using maybe Logic Pro's own to mess around with it, which is great. But I really love this technique that you can use in FabFilter Pro with the solo function. And as I said, like it depends on the sound that I'm working on, but sometimes there's one frequency that I want to take away, and sometimes it's like 4 or 3. You should never overdo it like that much, more than that, because that can really destroy the sound. So you really have to be careful when you take away frequencies from a sound, because that can just lose the whole, this whole image, this whole sound of the whole style of a sound, basically. To continue with the song. So in this case, to make it, because obviously it's very acoustic, it's very original, it's very acoustic in the break. So you had to I had to add elements to make it a better flow, basically. So in this case, I had a little bit of a like a pop structure with like a very typical like Katy Perry like beat, but it really helps bringing make the track go forward, and rather than like for it being like in blocks. So you have like break, then you have build up, and then you have drop. So this way you create like a really nice story throughout the whole song with rhythm, and you can do a kick also, just a 4x4 kick, but I like to spice things up a little bit to make the rhythm a little bit more. Yeah, different. But I gave it all I got in the city of lost souls. But now I'm leaving. So basically now we're coming to the build-up, right? And what I like to do is that I like to use some of the sounds from the drop. So what my approach is, what I usually do is that I have, for example, the piano melody, and then I would play some top melodies. So I would like play around on my, obviously I have a MIDI keyboard at home, so I played around on my MIDI keyboard. And you start finding like some notes that really triggers you, and from that point, when you find some notes that triggers you and that sounds good with the chords of the original the breakdown, I like to start thinking about like a drop. So like a drop rhythm, and also like chords and rhythm, and also with the top melody. So like I work in a very messy way in some kind. Like I start off first with a break, and from there on I try to find some top melodies, and then from there on I start building the song. And usually what I always do, which is not that great really, but for me it works okay, because I would really want to try out my songs when I'm DJing. So to be able to do that, you need like a little master. So I always have my master on, as you can see here in the corner. So I always have my master on, so I will know that this is how it might sound when it's finished. So, and also I can try it out when I'm on the road, for example, and I don't need to worry about like it being too low or like not compressed enough, for example. So, but when it comes to like workflow, I usually tend to have a top melody already now on top of my break chords. But it's quite boring to just make the same chords as the break, as in the drop. If you want to spice things up, it's really cool to make different chords for the drop, and you divide the whole song in different parts, basically, to make it more interesting. And throughout this song, it's a story throughout the whole song. I don't know how many of you guys heard this song, but it's like it changes chords throughout the whole song, which is like really, it brings you down and then it brings you up again, and it's really cool. But when it comes to chords, usually I play it on my piano first, and then when I have my chord structure, I make the the velocity on each note read, because in the drop I want everything to be like maximized basically. I don't want it to be, if sometimes if you play it like a humanized, if you play it on the piano, it will have the different velocities and everything, and sometimes that can take away a note, or yeah, a note if you play it too soft, for example. So what I like to do is that I like to first play it very emotionally on the piano, and then when I have the chords ready, I like to move on to the drop and just make everything red and start building the rhythm. So this is the whole, like, it's very basic chords, but it really works. I really feel emotional when I hear it. Like when I made it, I really loved it because it was really, it really gives you a feeling of some sort, and it really matched. For me, I thought it really matched the vocal in a really nice way. Um, but when it comes to build-up, for example, as I mentioned before, I like to use some parts of the drop to tease a little bit the listener on what's gonna come. So what I usually do is I tend to use the sounds that are the most. I tend to use sounds that are like more reverb and more atmospheric in the build-ups, and then I like to keep the more straightforward sounds like the saw leads and the pretty basic, like lead layering sound. I just use them in the drop, but then I use the more experimental sounds for the build-ups because it can really create like a nice vibe. And also, like a typical technique I always use is that I always do the piano in the build-up also, just to tease a little bit the listener on what's going to come. And obviously with some typical snares and all these things. But let's go to the drop and let's check out the lead layering, because I think that's the most interesting maybe for you guys to see. Let's start off with the chords. So usually with my chords, I have a piano that I really like. It's from EXS24 sampler, but in this case, I changed it to a Nexus piano because it suited the drop more, because the other piano that I use from EXS24 sampler is a bit different and covers different frequencies. But this piano is very basic. It's the Arena Ambience. It's from Nexus. But it's all about like what you do with the piano, with the processing, that really makes it stick out a bit and makes it more powerful. And I also send my stuff to buses. I like to use obviously buses because you can really add some detail work on that bus to make it like perfect. So as you can hear, it sounds very dull. And usually, obviously, with pianos, I don't want it to interfere. You have some bass notes in there, but a tip for making the piano a little bit lighter is to just cut out the lows and like around 100 or 130 or 150. Then somehow it will be a bit lighter. The piano will be. It will not only it will take away all the bass frequencies, but it will also make the piano more. Lighter and like more uplifting, which is my technique for this. And then I tend to use a multipressor from Logic's own. It's just to, make it a little bit brighter and control the low frequencies a little bit more. And then obviously another EQ here from FabFilter to cut out some bad frequencies that's in the piano. That was, basically this bad. So as you can hear now, by itself, it sounds a little bit like, it doesn't sound that great by itself, but in the whole mix, when you do your mix down, when you're finished with the whole song, you want to do the EQing. So you want to make sure that every sound has its own part of the drop. So that's what I did with this one. I did the EQing afterwards when I did the mix down, because some frequencies were just interfering way too much with the leads that I had, that I will show you in a few seconds. And also, I did the OTT on this piano in the drop. It just makes it a little bit more, obviously compressed. It sounds a bit more, it doesn't sound as light as it sounds without it. I did also boost a little bit in the highs. These stuff are just for automation, so nothing really fancy. Also, for sidechain, I use a compressor. I do sidechain compression, and what I usually do is that I have my kick sent to a bus one usually. So every time I create a new project, I always create the bus one as the kick bus. So it's very easy because eventually when you make a song, you will have a lot of tracks, you will have a lot of buses. So it will be very messy for you to always try to find like bus 8 or bus 11 for your sidechain kick. So what I always do when I do a new project, I always set up the bus 1 as a kick bus, basically. So basically what this means is that every time the kick is playing, the sidechain will work. When the kick is not playing, the sidechain won't be triggered. Because sometimes when you use LFO tool or Kickstarter, for example, it's always going to be there if you don't do automation. But if you always have to do automation on all your sounds when you don't want the sidechain, it's pretty inconvenient. And that's why I like sidechain compression more, because number one, it will be easier for you to work, and yeah, it's not going to be that much hassle when you work. And when the kick is not playing, it's not going to be triggered, which is, for me, that's very convenient. And then on the bus, I like to use scanner vibrato. This one does almost the same job as the dimension expander. Basically, from X4 Records. Basically, what it does is just make the sound pop a little bit more. It makes the sound stick out a bit more in the mix, as you can hear. And this is as a built-in plugin. This is more for creating vibrato and chorus for your sounds. But if you somehow if you just put you don't actually use the vibrato function from this. You just use the effect that this plugin does on a channel, which is I don't know how I found this technique, but I was just playing around, I think, a few years ago. And I always been using it since that day, because somehow it just makes the sound pop. So if you use Logic Pro, you should definitely try it out. Just put it on the first preset and then go down to 0. It will make the sound pop out more in your mix, which is what you want. Some EQing also. I added some mid frequencies here. I used the waves EQ for that because it's very organic sounding. And then when it comes to the leads. So my approach when it comes to leads, it depends on from song to song. For this song, it's more about, it's not the typical lead melody that I usually do. For this song, the lead melody is actually not playing that often. And this means that you either need to have a longer release on your synth, or you work more with reverb. And in this case, I worked a lot with reverbs for my leads. So I have actually one lead that has a lot of reverb on it. And sometimes if you work too much with reverb, it can destroy your mix totally. So you really need to be careful, and you need to go back and forward with your mixing when you work on your lead layering, because if you overdo it, it will sound very messy. And maybe in this mix it sounds a little bit messy, but for me it works. I'm really happy with it, and as long as I'm happy, that's also when the label is happy and the artist is happy, that's great. And but I usually go for my own gut feeling from the beginning, and if I really like it, I will go for that approach. And when it comes to reverb, there's some different reverbs that sounds great, like Valhalla reverb or the reverb from Uhe. But I'm using sometimes for leads the true verb from Waves, which somehow gives the sound a little bit of stereo width also. So it doesn't just give a reverb to your sound; it also gives of a mixing function to your sound. Basically, I can play it without the reverb. It's really difficult to hear now, but it really adds a little bit of width to your sound in a really good way. So you don't need to do stereo imaging or anything on that specific sound, which is quite handy. Also, for this one, I used the built-in reverb from the synth. And when I was working on this song, on this remix, I was trying to find a sound that would stick out in the mix a little bit. And this is actually the main sound of the drop. That it has a lot of reverb. It has a good attack, and it sounds very warm. And again, this is just a preset, but it's how you tweak it and how you work with the mixing inside, and also how you work with the MIDI pattern that matters. So this is this is the main like lead that sticks out in the mix, that really gives all the leads more character. And then we have some. So when it comes to like lead layering, it's really cool to work in different octaves. So you have one lead playing in a lower octave to cover the mid frequencies, and then you have some other leads that are covering the highs, the really, really highs. And usually I like to work with them more with reverb. So I will really create the really high octave leads. I will make them more reverby or longer in release, because they are working in the like atmospheric part of the song. And then you have some leads that are more clear, like these ones, for example. And this is all like, I think sound design is really cool, but I think it takes a lot of time, and especially when it comes to progressive house, it when it comes to sound design, it takes a bit too long time, I think, and that's why I like it's more. You can be more creative with leads layering, and you can be more creative with creating tweak some presets, but then you build up your leads with like 7, 8 different leads, and then you will create one big lead. That's number one, really difficult to recreate for people, but also you will create something with your own touch, like or your own niche, basically. And also, what I do with my leads is that I send them all to one bus. When I choose all my sounds that I like, and when I start to like thinking about like what kind of mixing I want to do for the song, I send all of my leads to a bus. And usually what I do here, I usually do compression and also another sidechain compression to make sure it doesn't really interfere with the kick. I didn't do it in this song. But what I usually like to do is to make sure that, on this bus with all the leads, I like to make sure that they're not interfering with the bass or the piano. So I just cut out some low frequencies to make sure, because obviously there's a lot of reverb in these leads. So sometimes the individual EQ on the individual channel doesn't really affect that much. So you need to make sure that you double check that you really cut out your lows so it doesn't really interfere with the rest of the song. Basically, especially when you work a lot with reverbs, because that can really destroy your mix. And then I used another scanner vibrato, because that will just make. So basically, what the goal is when you do lead layering is that you want to make 5 or 6 or 7 leads to sound like one lead. And this way you can send them to a bus, and from that point you will glue them together a little bit, and then you will make them sound like as one lead. And that's like one of my final touches I do on my bus with my leads. I like to put the scanner vibrato on it, and just to make them pop a little bit more, and then also EQ. Another one to just make sure that it was a little bit too harsh in the highs, and I have some other effects in the drop, like rides, for example, like here. And these rides and these hi-hats, they also empathize the rhythm of the lead melody and the chords. So I wanted to make sure I cut out the highs to make some space for the rides, and also to cut out some mids for the piano, and obviously the lows, because there we have the basses. So these are basically the leads. Do you have any questions, by the way, about the leads or something? No? Sweet. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which packs do you use for this song?
Well, it depends. I have many. Okay, so the question was what kind of packs I use for my leads. It's different. I've been saving up since I started making music 9 years ago. Sometimes I go back to silent. I use my really, really old preset packs from like 2013. Sometimes I go to newer packs, like the Kashmir package, for example, I think. Okay, so these are like some of the sound preset packs that I use for my. It's just stuff that I found online and stuff that I think can sound good. And if they don't sound good, I will not use them, but they're still gonna be there. But yeah, I just try to. I don't tend to think so much about the creator, so to speak, of the sample pack. I just try to find as much preset packs as possible, and then afterwards I will go in there and look if I see if I found something unique, number one, or if I found something that can be useful as a mixing tool, as a filler, like for like a basic saw, but that saw sounds really crispy and clean. So it all depends on like the process that I do, and yeah, I tend to spend a lot of.
Can you show the name of the packs that you, for instance, use in silent?
Well, let's see. Oh yeah. Oh, this is the reveal. This is from reveal actually. Yeah, the revealed preset pack. Great. Where's the reveal? Yeah. It's really really good. They have some really amazing sounds. Also, the sample packs are really good that I'm using. For this song, I didn't have any sample packs yet, but I had the preset packs. But now I use their sample packs also a lot, which is really really cool. Anyways, yeah. So we have the we can go further with the basses. Also, when it comes to effects in the drop, to make it more energetic. So to add some extra like energy to the drop is to add some white noise or downlifters of some sort. And what I like nowadays to put it on every basically every 4 bar. So basically it will keep the energy going throughout the whole drop, which is like I've been doing it since the free fall remix I did for Armin, and I really like that technique. Because before I just put one like downlifter and that's it. But if you really want to like keep like the energy going, I really like to use this technique. Just use basic downlifters, but also be very very careful because there's a lot of bad frequencies in like especially downlifters. So you really need to make sure that you cut out like really bad frequencies that are not gonna, yeah, so they're not gonna interfere too much with your song. And then also what I like to do as an extra energy provider is to work with rides and hats. And this way, you will emphasize number one the rhythm of the chords and also the lead melody, and you will make the drop. It's like this is like small stuff that if you take them away, you will hear it if you take them away. But if you keep them there, you will not really pay attention to them. But it really emphasizes the rhythm and the energy in the song. So I usually, when I have a rhythmic drop, I like to use these kind of elements to empathize the rhythm a little bit. And we can also go through the basses, and then we can do some questions. And you can ask me anything about like on a different project or something. So what I like to do with basses is that I have my two go-to like basses usually. Sometimes I always use my one sub that I've been using since like freeze time because I really enjoy how it sounds. It's very full. But when it comes to like mid basses, I like to be a little bit more creative and try new things, depending on how much time I have, especially when it comes to remix. Sometimes you don't have that much time. Because bass processing is quite time consuming, as you might all know. Also lead layering, but I'd rather like focusing on like making the leads unique and different, and then stick to maybe a pattern of bass leads, for example. But I really love this sub from. It's actually just a normal bass from Silent, but I just cut the highs basically, and it becomes a sub bass, and it's really full. Sometimes you use a sub bass, and you can add some R bass. What I did also here to make it bigger and more full. But in this case, I've used this sub for many years already, and I'm really comfortable with it. And when it comes to like sending basses to a bus, also as I did with the leads, it's very good to send your basses to a bus because there you can tie them up a little bit and make them like a bit compressed. So you make sure that all these 5 basses sound like as one bass, basically. So as you can hear, they sound very, very poor and very bad individually. But in this song, it's not about how the basses are actually sounding as a signature sound. It's about the leads in this song, about making the song very reverby and like more atmospheric. So the basses don't really do anything for the signature sound, but it's more about like filling out the missing frequencies, basically, in this song. And also what I like to do is to always keep the basses on the same side chain. So, you know, you want them to sound like one bass, not just like 4 different layers or something, or 5 different layers. So I use the same like settings as I use for my subs for all my basses. So they will all sound the same basically, and they will go well together. And you know, when you work with basses, it's like really you really need to pay attention to what the purpose is of each bass. For example, the first one is just to give warmth, make the basses a bit warmer. I got this tip from, I think, Arne Kost in like a studio tour before, and he just mentioned that this built-in talk box from Nexus is that this individual sound just gives some extra warmth. It's not really, you can't really hear it when you play all them together, but it just gives that extra warm feeling to your basses. So this talk box feeling, this talk box sound is really, really, really handy. And also what I told about in the break about the vocoder, you can add a vocoder to your vocal. Not necessarily for the main sound of the break, to make it like a vocoder break like I Morgan Heap, but it really adds some extra warm frequencies to your sound, which is what you wanna have. And yeah, we have obviously a basic saw bass. This one really fills up most of the mid frequency, lower mid frequency spectrum. It's all about finding the right sounds and then tweak them from there on. Again, without processing, this sounds really good. But let's see here. I needed to add some of the higher mids. Obviously, this is not a sub. I didn't want to use this as a sub. I just wanted to use it as a mid bass and a lower mid bass. So I obviously cut out the lows, so it will give space for the sub. Most of these ones, I've actually gave some space for the sub bass, which I cut it around like 90 hertz because it's just used for a sub bass. So what I like to do for the other bass layers is that I just cut them out in the same frequencies, so I'll make sure that they don't interfere with the sub bass, basically. We have some other processing. This is just for automation. We have some multipression. As you can hear, it just gives a little bit more of a highs. It just keeps it a bit more controlled, but also gives a little bit more boosting in the highs. And it makes it a little bit brighter. And also, this is Fab Filter Saturn. It's really great to dirty up the whole bass layer a little bit to make it a bit more filthy. Which I like, because this will also this distortion and overdrive and all these things will always also add warmth to your. It will always add a warmer frequency to your layers, which is what you want. Again, and obviously LFO to sidechain it, and then we have another layer. This is for a mixing purpose to fill up some frequencies in the higher mid. And this is also again to make this saw sound. It's just to make the bass layers a bit more warmer also. Let's see. We could do some questions because we only have a few minutes left. Yeah. Anyone have any questions? Yeah.
Show some of the pads.
Huh?
The pads.
Wait. Let's do this microphone.
Would you show some of the pads you used?
The packs?
The pads. So the piano and the background chords.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
Because they're really filling the mix.
So you wanted to know what from the piano? What did you want to know?
Yeah, the kind of ambient sounds.
Oh, the ambient sounds. Okay, yeah. So what I use for ambient sound is number one, the ARP. So if I overdrive it, for example, as you can hear, it adds a lot of energy to the drop. You don't want to have it obviously too loud or too low, but it's just about like the balance. And also what I like to add is this little ARP sound that I have. And I've been using this since maybe 2 years back, and this just adds a little bit more groove and better flow to your... This is from Silent, a preset from Silent. I don't remember exactly the name of it, but... So as you can hear, if I turn... It really adds the extra flow that you want. And also in this song, I use the vocal. Oh. And this also adds like the extra, groove and the extra like flow for your drop. And then I went through the rides and the crashes. We went through that. We went through okay, then I also have another one here of girl voice sample. And I just use it for emotional purposes to make it a little bit more, emotional and atmospheric. I'll turn up the volume so you can hear how it sounds in the mix. Sorry about that. So it really adds these extra, emotional feelings that you want for your song. Yeah, anyone else have any questions?
Did you sidechain the reverb as well?
Huh?
Did you sidechain the reverb as well?
Sidechain, yeah.
The
yeah.
reverb only? Or?
Well, I have, yeah. But I usually have my sidechain compression in the end of the channel, so it's going to duck everything that's in the channel, which is included the reverb.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you in front. Yeah.
Could you show us the lead compression?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in this one, I didn't really use compression on the bus. When it comes to compression, I like to be careful and not overdo it because I use very strong compression on my master. So if I compress my individual sounds too much, it will just destroy my end result. And since I used to produce around my master, I tend to not use that much compression on my leads. So in this case, let's see, we can check it out and see because all these compressors here is just for sidechain. So they're not really for the compression purpose of what it's supposed to do. This is just for sidechain purpose. Yeah, so I didn't use any compression on my leads.
Okay.
Can you go over your master chain?
Yeah, I can just show you what I have on my master. It's pretty basic. It's the compression first to make sure that you have you control your frequencies a bit, and I can show you how it sounds without. So as you can hear now, it sounds a bit jumpy, and this is because I don't use that much compression on my individual sounds. When it comes to, first what I usually do, I just put a compressor, the glue I use. And that way it will make it a little bit higher, it will control the peaks a little bit more. And then I use the isotope ozone, I use the multipressor from that, and that way I usually, now when I will play it, you will hear that the basses will really be compressed. I heavily compress my basses, my lower frequencies, and then I tend to use the spreader for the dynamics. Yeah, the stereo imager, to make sure it's all the basses are in mono, and make the mids, lower mids a little bit more in mono. I like to open up the highs a little bit so they are a little bit like spreaded. Like, oh, it looks like a heart now. Beautiful. And then I'll just do, I use this endless smile because of just for automation purposes to make the build up a little bit more exciting. I don't know if you know this one, but it's really, really great from Dot Life. It just makes your build-up work a little bit easier. And this guy is sad, but now it's happy. And then I used the invisible limiter from AOM, which I love. I used to use Fab Filter limiter before, but and also the limiter from Waves. But then I got this tip from Walton State, and they recommended this limiter, and it's catches the peaks in an amazing way, and it's just you can really boost your song without destroying it. Yeah.
When you were mixing the track, how much headroom did you give yourself?
A lot. So basically, because as you can see, I boost a lot on my limiter, on my channels. I have them very low, so I have too much headroom. I think it's because I always been working around my master, and always having the limiter a bit high. In that sense, when you make collaborations, or if I somehow in the future will send my songs to a mastering engineer, I will know that I don't need to mind the headroom, the worry about like it being too high. I like to work really low. As you can see on my mixer here, most of the sounds are super low. And this is basically my mixer, so I have a lot of headroom. A bit too much, but that's how I work. Yeah. Back there, we have one. Oh, there also. Yeah. No, I can just it's dodgeball.
Hey, do you put reverb on your mid basses? Because I saw that you have some reverb on your mid basses.
Yeah, yeah. So it depends on which one of them it is. I think it's this one. No, this one. Yeah. So again, like reverb can make your sound a bit warmer. Obviously not on the subs. That would just, for me, it would destroy the song, I think. But on some of the higher mid basses. Let's see. Oh yeah. So, but I used the true verb here, but not for really the reverb purpose. I used true verb to make this mid bass a little bit warmer. As I mentioned before, the true verb is really great for making the sound a little bit wider, also in a very natural way, without using stereo imaging or one of those plugins. So I just used the reverb for this one, just for making the mid talk box more warm, basically. Yeah. Yeah. Last question. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
How did you process the kick of the drop?
Yeah. So the kick drum is I've been using like a kick since like 2 or 3 years back, and I always tweak it to make sure it's good enough. I think this kick is originally from the beginning, like the Vengeance kick, the 88 or something like that. Vengeance kick 88. I don't know the kick that all the progressive house producers use, but I've been tweaking it like a lot during these years. And on every song I do, I try to tweak it a little bit and make it a bit different. And now I really like now I use a different kick, but since I did this song, I did it last year, for quite a few months ago. So I still was in the same process then. So it's a very basic kick, originally from the Vengeance, but obviously tweaked, and again tweaked in this project also, because in this project I needed to boost some of the like lower mids. So. Yeah, when it comes to kick processing, like I'm a bit, I like, because that's also like a thing that takes time. It's like sound design a little bit. So I like to, there's no shame in like using packs, you know, or sample from other people, but make sure that when you sample from packs and other people, it will already be processed. So be careful on the processing. This kick is already, from the beginning, quite like unprocessed. So I know that I can just put some stuff on it to make it suit this specific song. With adding some frequencies in the mids or in that tack or something like that. I also like to use the transient shaper for my kicks. It really gives your kick a little bit of depth. And I love this one. The transient shaper is really, really good. But for this song, I didn't use it, but usually I do. Yeah, yeah, that was the last song. Last question. Sorry, I'm a bit tired. Thank you so much, guys, for showing up, and I hope you guys liked it. And I will, for those of you who don't know, I usually do midweek mentions where I talk about my songs and stuff. I haven't done it in quite a while, but I'm gonna get back on that. So stay tuned on my Facebook and Instagram for more information. Yeah, and have a good day. Bye.